When I left the Special Forces, I spent a lot of time looking for the team that I could match when I was in the Special Forces, without realizing it was underneath my nose.
Today I have the privilege of speaking with Dean Stott. He's a remarkable individual. The best way to frame his life is to frame it with words like dedication, resilience, and reinvention. He's a former British Special Forces soldier. Spent 16 years in service, facing challenges that demanded courage, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to protecting what matters most. He serves shoulder to shoulder with Prince Harry, and they've become best of friends. After an injury ended his military career,
my foot, which was caught in a line above my head. And so I'm trying to clear my leg in time before this static line opens the parachute.
Dean went into a bit of a spiral.
For me, I was trying to match that adrenaline rush that I had when I was in the Special Forces without actually coming to terms with the fact that I'd left.
Before realizing that he still had purpose.
My wife sat me down with 2 bottles of wine and we had a long discussion through the night. And chapter 16 in my book is called Dead or Divorced. And this was what we were chatting about.
His story reminds us of the profound lessons learned through service. Lessons that apply to all of us in safeguarding what we value, whether it's our loved ones, our communities, or our principles. Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast. And ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated. Dean Stott, welcome to Chatter That Matters.
Morning.
Age 8. You're part of a military family, which means you're always on the move. What did that mean to a kid of that age?
It was just the norm for me. Every 3 years, my father would get posted. So every time you felt like you were getting settled, you were building friendship, some sort of stability, you then were moving again and having to start all over again. Tended to be these garrison towns, military towns, where your friends at school, their fathers or mothers were in the military as well. So you had something in common there. My dad's birthday is actually New Year's Eve. It was January the 1st. Went downstairs. She made me and my sister's breakfast. I could see there was blood stains on the floor. I didn't know what it was at the time, but in reflection, there was obviously elements of domestic violence. She didn't tell us what we were doing, put us on a train. We were down in the south of England, and my mother was from Manchester originally. And we drove back to Manchester because my grandparents were there. And it wasn't until we got to Manchester that she then told us that she'd now left my father. For me, I was very close to my father.
Did you resent your mum and all for that? I mean, somebody that's close to their dad, not that aware of what is going on. Did you sort of say, why am I here? Why do I have to sort of fight to survive versus whatever stability you had being a military kid?
Not that I was aware of, it just made those weekends with my father something that we'd look forward to. And it was just that natural father-son bond. My father went for custody for me and the kids, and the judge made a decision that he wasn't going to split the siblings. The decision went down to the eldest, which was me. A big decision at the age of 10 to say, I want to live with my father. But when it actually came to the day that my father came to pick us up and I saw how heartbroken my mom was, that's still ingrained in my memory. I still remember step by step that whole process of my mother leaving and my father taking over. But from then on, when we moved back down south, my father finished his 22-year career, and then we then transitioned into the civilian world. We actually moved into a little village in the countryside in England where no one was from the military. And that was where I did my last 4 years of schooling. So there was a bit of stability then for me. I was actually now playing what you guys call soccer. I was playing soccer and rugby and everything else, and had a normal childhood.
In your book, you talked about, you always get asked the questions, what do you think you want to be? You say to your dad, you're thinking of a military career, and he kind of looks at you and says, you wouldn't last 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think on reflection, you said 10 minutes. He actually said 2 minutes. So I'm glad he said 10. It was longer than what he anticipated, but you can argue with someone who has a different opinion to you, and you can keep arguing and arguing, and you're probably not even going to change their mind. The best course of action was action itself. So that Monday morning, I walked into the careers office and joined the military. And I think it was from then on that my father was like, okay, he's actually being serious here. I was going to join the parachute regiment. He's like, no, you're not. He goes, you could be in the engineers and you can get a trade. He was thinking to get as much as you can from your time in the military, thinking I would probably do 3 to 5 years. I joined at the age of 17 and a half. By the age of 21, I was an airborne commando, a diver. I'd done every arduous course you could do in the engineers. And the only sort of real option then that I hadn't done was tier 1 special forces. I was already in tier 2 special forces.
You know, your book is called Relentless, but what gave you that attitude at that early an age to say, I want to crush this?
I was growing physically, but mentally I was getting stronger as well. I started believing in myself that actually not only can you do it, you are one of the better ones. And so within the Royal Engineers, you know, the money's not great in the military. So the additional qualifications like being a parachutist gets you an extra £5 a day. Being a diver gives you an extra £20 a day. So I was just like, how do I top up my beer tokens? And so was doing these arduous courses, ended up in the commandos, which is the tier 2 special forces. But then there was always another group, another tier that were just going off to tier 1 special forces. That was the pinnacle. The tier 1 special forces is not like what you see on Hollywood, where they're screaming and shouting at you in your face. They actually don't even shout at you at all. The course is that hard itself. You have to be self-motivated, self-driven. It takes a certain individual. They're not all stocky with muscles. Some of them just blend in.
The way you talk about this group of people, I mean, it was almost a second family or a community of friends that a lot of people have growing up, but it was kind of denied to you.
When you speak to a lot of veterans and you ask them what they miss, you know, it's that camaraderie. Is that sort of family. A lot of the people from the military don't come from stable backgrounds. And so when they actually get into the military, they find this friendship, this bond with these other individuals. And remember, these individuals are doing everything that you're doing. So the heartache and the pain, you know, that you're doing on these courses, they're also experiencing that as well. So you have something in common with them.
So talk to me about tier 1. As you said, it's a completely different step change.
So our first 4 weeks is basically a map and a compass, a big backpack, a house on your back and a weapon. And you just running point to point for 4 weeks. There's no one there shouting at you. There's no one telling you, you know, giving you motivation, because if you are successful and you end up in these units, you could find yourself working on your own behind enemy lines. And if you have to be motivated by someone else, then you don't fit that mold. So the selection process, as it says, selection is to weed out. And it's not just the physical ones as well. You could be the fittest person in the world, but if you don't know how to operate that radio or operate that specialist bit of equipment, then you're useless as well. So it actually is about information retention, self-motivation. Yes, having a bit of physical ability.
How much of what you learn should be taken and brought in context? Because obviously we're dealing with different circumstances, but into school.
What you have nowadays in society as well is everyone's worried about how they're going to be portrayed. Everyone's worried about failure. You know, the word failure, I don't use that. You know, I call it an experience. You can't be experienced without experiences. So I think with the children nowadays is very difficult when they're all on digital. They're losing the skill sets of being able to bond with others, being able to communicate as a group. So that teamwork is something that's important, but communication's important as well, is that these kids know that, you know, they can stand in front of the others. And if their decision's wrong, it's wrong, but you learn from it.
Often I see you with Prince Harry and two very close friends sitting together. You ended up with them because you kind of made a remark when he first showed up for training. To me, I think it's really interesting how sometimes unforeseen remarks end up with a lifetime bond.
Harry and I, it was 2007, August 2007. I was a sergeant in the Special Forces at this point, and he was a young second lieutenant. He went on a JTAC course. So JTAC is Joint Tactical Air Control. So I turned up on this course, and he was actually sat directly in front of me. And then the first lecture is call signs. And so the instructor said, you know, on this course, you're going to be called Jackpot 1 to 1-8. So Harry then puts his hand up and he said, you know, if successful on this course and I do go to Afghanistan, will I have my own call sign? And I just blurted out, I said, yeah, you're Fox Piss 1, because he had ginger hair. And he looked round, he saw my beret and he smiled at me. But that was it. The sergeant major was then like, because you need to then get partnered off. He goes, you two are partnered off. Because he knew that I would treat him as one of the guys. I wouldn't see him as a member of the royal family. I would see him as a soldier and as an officer.
And I'm sure he wanted that.
Yeah. And I think he liked it. You know, there was a couple of occasions on that course actually where we went to some training areas and people would come over and give him a business card and say, look, my father owns, half of this county. Let's go hunting. And he must get that all the time. And so he just wanted to be treated like one of the guys. Because if he was going on deployment, which he then did, he was one of the guys. And actually, regardless of who his stature and who he was actually one of the better operators. He was very calm on the radio. He spoke clearly to the pilots. He was really good. And so, yeah, we formed that bondship and that friendship, and we continue that to today.
It must bother you sometimes when you read stuff that has no sense of reality, but I guess that just comes with the territory.
I remember our first evening that we went out drinking, people were coming up with cameras, and I was like, look, and he said, look, there's nothing I can do. They're allowed to take photos. I said, yes, but they're not allowed to take photos of us because we're in the special forces. So he loved it.
You love the military, you love the camaraderie, but you're doing a training exercise and you have a parachute accident.
Yeah.
That ends your military career. Just take me back to that. It's not like you were planning for retirement. It's not like you were thinking about it. It just happened.
Yeah, I was a lifer. So that means I was staying in for my full 22 and beyond. I had no aspirations of leaving the military at all. And I'd been in 16 years at this point. I was already hey-ho trained, and my sergeant major's like, well, just get some fun jumps in. I never believe there's fun jumps in the military or fun dives. This hey-ho is a high altitude, high opening. So unlike skydiving where you're free of lines, it's actually still attached to the aircraft. And as you exit the aircraft at 15,000 feet, which is the limits of oxygen, the parachute will open, and you travel up to 30 minutes in the air or 50 kilometers to your target point. As I exit the aircraft, I should be now looking straight ahead. And actually I'm looking up, and my leg is caught in the line above my head. It was just a freak accident. I was trying to clear my leg in time before the parachute went taut and open. I couldn't clear it in time, and it ripped my leg over my head into the right. And thankfully my ankle did clear from the line. Otherwise you had risk of taking your leg completely off. So straight away I knew there was a problem. I never experienced pain like it. I was vomiting because of the pain. Because of the altitude, the air was so thin, I was drifting in and out of consciousness as well. But each time I was regaining consciousness, I could see the guys, the stack, and I would just follow them towards the DZ. I managed to land it one-legged. It was a great landing, because I was worried that if I have a bad landing, I could damage the good leg. But the injury sustained ended my career. I tore my ACL, my MCL, my meniscus within my knee, all the ligaments, my hamstring, my calf, and my quadriceps, all the supporting muscles as well. So normally you could tear your ACL in your knee and still carry on because you have good muscle strength, but all the muscles in my leg had gone as well. So I was then told, thank you for your time. It's time to leave. So I see my friends going off to tour, and then I'm told, look, you now need to enter this alien environment to me, which is the civilian sector. I've not been a civilian since I was 17. And, what is my role? What is my purpose? How do I fit in society? At the time, I didn't really see it, but Alana, my wife, saw it. I was going through an identity crisis.
She even described it in her book as saying she saw such a different side of you. Anger and violence and confusion. What advice can you give to my listeners? Because we're in a world of a lot of uncertainty.
What I have learned over the years is you can't control the uncontrollable. You just have to react to what's happening at the time. It got to the point where I was angry and things like that, but I didn't actually communicate. I should have communicated with Alana. So for me, it wasn't until 5 years later that Alana and I then sat down once again and realized that there'd been no communication. I thought that she wanted me away working, and she thought I wanted to be away. It wasn't the case. So just communicate with your closest or your nearest and dearest, and life is life. Can't control the uncontrollable. Just roll with it.
As you served in the military, was there ever a time where you felt you were as close to the end of your life as could be?
When you're young at that age, like now, if I was doing a job now, I'd probably be a bit more risk adverse than when I was younger, but you do almost feel like indestructible because you have the best training, you have the best support network as well. You have the best medical care. But I think if you think of the worst case scenario, what could happen? What if you wouldn't get off the helicopter? The worst case scenario is you're going to die. We go in with that belief that we will succeed every mission, whatever it takes, even if it's the last man standing. So it's a mentality that's sort of been through the years in the military, but then even more so through selection.
What I loved about your book, Relentless, is you really cover that area. But where I saw such a different side of you is, as you said, when you're forced to find the next move. You start a security company. Maybe early on, it sounded like it was out of necessity. You needed to get contracts, but it sounded like you continued to gravitate where few people wanted those assignments.
To add to the pressure of me also leaving the military, Alana was 8 months pregnant with our first daughter. So in my head is like, I'm starting out all over again. I don't know if there's any work out there. How am I going to support Alana? How am I going to support our new baby? And the security industry isn't risk-reward ratio balanced at all. You know, you could be in the desert in Iraq and Afghanistan, Somalia, looking after chairmans and executive protection or some of these big sporting events. So that's where I wanted to focus is less risk and more reward. But I soon identified that I call them the big five, the big security companies were charging 6-7-figure sums for crisis management and evacuation plans, which weren't actually in place. It was just on a bit of paper. So I bought 30 weapons on the black market. There was a huge proliferation of weapons at the time and buried them between Tunis and Egypt and designed my own evacuation plans. Designed these plans and sold them to the oil and gas sector and just sat on them on retainers, hopefully never needed to use them. And then 2012, got an oil company, a German oil company, safely back to Tripoli through safe houses I had. So the evacuation plan that I'd written up had now been activated and now been used. And then 2 years later, because of the success of that, I received a phone call from the Canadian embassy. It was now the Tripoli war, civil war between the militia and the government. And I single-handedly evacuated the Canadian embassy, 18 military and 4 diplomats from Tripoli back to Tunis. But it sounds very sexy, sounds very Hollywood. I've never actually had to use any of my weapons or dig up any of my weapons at all. So, and something you touched on earlier, which really resonates, is Hollywood. You know, Hollywood has this perception of guys like us. It's like, you know, Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, the biceps, the bullets and the bombs. But that's the offensive action. That's 25% of actually what tier 1 special forces do. 50% of what we do isn't really that glamorous. It's hearts and minds and support and influence. It's being embedded with locals on the ground. And that's where I was successful at what I took from my time in the special forces to the security industry. It was understanding the demographics, the politics, the tribal influences, and using these locals and local intelligence. And that was the success of that operation.
There's one part of your book where you had everything going, but you forgot to put in a pair of brown contact lenses.
We used to go pick up Taliban agents and we would dress up as Taliban ourselves. So this one day I hit a roadblock and I got told to turn right and went right, and it was bumper to bumper with traffic. And we have these makeup kits. I had my own beard. I dyed it black, but we have eyebrows, contact lenses, stuff to really sort of break up your features. But I don't like putting anything in my eyes. I'd have a black beard, very nice tan turban, but then piercing blue eyes. And I thought they stood out. So it was bumper to bumper and everyone started knocking on the door and knocking on the window of the vehicle. So I said to my Terp, I said, I think we've been compromised. And he agreed. They've seen my eyes. But your senses are heightened because you know you shouldn't be in that position. You know you're undercover. And so everything's going on in your head. HQ can hear this. So they're talking in my earpiece. They're like, are you happy with the drill, the immediate action drill? I said, yeah, I'm happy with that. An immediate action drill basically is we have a submachine gun underneath our seat. We empty 30 rounds, the magazine, into the windscreen to give yourself some time. You grab your weapon, you go to the rear of the vehicle where there's an RPG, and you blow up the vehicle because you don't want them getting any of the comms kit or specialist kit. So this is all going on in my head. And I'm thinking CNN, orange boiler suit. You're thinking worst case scenario. And as I go to drop my hand to get the weapon, each time we're slowly nudging forward with the traffic. Thankfully for me, the second vehicle has now come around the corner and seen what's going on. And my friend adds, he comes across the net and says, stop. So straight away, I just dropped the weapon. And he said, your turban's caught in the door. I was misreading the situation because I was in a heightened sense of fear, when in fact everyone was being genuinely nice. So I use that a lot when I do a lot of security presentations about people run into situations and automatically assume the worst or see what's going on. The best thing to do is just pause. Just pause for a few seconds, really take in what's going on. Because I misread that situation completely.
When we return, Dean Stott needs another reset as he approaches his 40th birthday. His wife, Alana, comes up with a wild idea to break the world record, cycling 14,000 miles from southern Argentina to Alaska, and in doing so, raise money for Prince Harry's charity. Will he do the impossible? Stick around and find out. Hi, it's Tony Chapman. I want to talk to you about the RBC Purpose Framework. This is a bold commitment to make a meaningful difference in our communities. By 2035, RBC will make a philanthropic investment of $2 billion to support community ideas that help seed, scale, and sustain solutions in 3 key areas where RBC believes they can have a meaningful impact. First is to support the transition to a net zero economy. The second, in face of such massive change, equip people with skills for a thriving future. And third, drive equitable opportunities for prosperity, including food security, housing stability, health services, and financial well-being. When communities thrive, we all prosper. And that matters to you, to me, and to RBC.
I actually can relate to that when I got injured myself, that point that I had to leave this tribe and I couldn't get back in. It's like, well, what is the next tribe for me? Could be in anything. If you've worked for a company for 20 years and you retire, you've left that tribe again. And it seems to be a void.
My guest today is Dean Stott. What can you say about someone who invests his life protecting the lives of others, is a 2-time world record holder, a friend of Prince Harry, and an extraordinary entrepreneur? Your security business is going well, but either you or Alana or both of you realize there's still a vacuum in your life. You come up with one of the most extraordinary goals.
Yeah. Cycling
from Argentina to Alaska.
Alana sat down with me and highlighted I'd only been home 21 days in 365-day calendar. I totally disconnected from society. What I was doing, what I thought was normal, wasn't normal. We were doing some very high-end profile jobs. And as well as a security company, Alana was running a very successful property development company. So I actually didn't need to be going away. It wasn't for the money. It was for me, for the adrenaline rush. And so we decided to take a sabbatical from the security industry, go work with Alana. And Alana could see that I needed to do something. And I said, well, I fancy doing a world record. I was just before my 40th birthday. And Alana then it was Alana that found the world's longest road. So I joked that she clearly wanted me out of the house. And yeah, it's 14,000 miles from southern Argentina to northern Alaska over 2 continents. I said, perfect. For me, I knew I had the mindset. I knew I had the endurance. I just needed to turn that into a sport. I'd got to the top of my game within the military. I was now one of the top, if not the top security consultant in the industry. Could I do that again in a sport that I'd never done before?
I mean, this wasn't a military operation where you were trained to trust each other and had each other. I mean, you had a lot of stray cats.
Yeah, we had a lot of stray cats. We did it I reached out to Harry. Him and I had done a lot of charity work together, me, him and Alana in the past. And I told him about the bike ride. And he was launching a campaign with his brother and Kate on mental health. The Heads Together campaign was it was launched at the London Marathon. So a lot of people really wanted to get around it. So we were inundated with requests with people wanting to help on this challenge, thinking they wanted to do it because of the cause and to raise the money. I joke when I say the bike ride was the easiest bit. The hardest bit was managing egos, other people, wanting that exposure, wanting to change the name of the challenge to match their company. And it's like, no, that you can't, because in charity, I don't know, it's like in the US, but in the UK, you can't financially gain on the back end of a charity.
You raised over $1.4 million. That's incredible.
The world record was 117 days. I completed it in 99 days, became the first man in history to do it under 100 days, which was impressive. But what was more impressive was the fundraising. Interesting enough, Alana, she's the genius behind that, because it was left up to me. It'd probably be about $50 because I didn't know about social media either. We were, we had literally just started social media before I did the bike ride, and the majority of the money came from big corporate donors.
It is nice that you're giving so much credit to Alana, but I mean, 340 miles in 17 hours to finish this off and to put it under 100 days.
Where the success of this project was actually the situation changes on the ground and reacting to those situation changes. You can't control the uncontrollable. I took in South America, I had food poisoning. I crashed my bike. I got knocked off my bike. I took 10 days off the South America world record, and I got into North America on day 70 and I was 14 days ahead. I'm like, perfect. Alana then rings me. 5 times within an hour. And she's very good at keeping the distractions away from me. And she's like, we've been invited to Harry and Meg's wedding. That's nice. That's nice. And she goes, no, you're now a day behind. So going into that phone call, I was 14 days ahead. Next thing, I'm a day behind. So cycling in South America is very different from North America. I could cycle at night. And so I got outside of the finish, about a week outside. And then my friend messages me and said, have you seen this guy? He's a professional cyclist, got 3 other endurance records, sponsored by Red Bull, all the big brands. And he'd come out on social media and said that he was going to cycle it under 100 days. And so every time I was hitting my objective kept moving. If I'd known about him, if I'd known about Harry's wedding at the beginning when I set off, would it have been too much? Would I have been able to sort of deal with that pressure? For me, the success of this was being reactive to the situation as it unfolded in front of me.
Are people around you realize that if they don't put that rung ahead of you, that you might be dangerous by the fact that you get bored?
For me to be physically and mentally engaged, I do need a challenge. And I think everyone does. Your body is like a river flowing. It needs to keep moving. If you pause, if you stop, you have those stagnant ponds, you get ill. So you need to keep flowing. You need to keep moving. But the problem with me is the control in the flow, the speed of the flow. For me, it's like, I can't just go cycle or join a cycling club. I have to find the world's biggest road. But everyone out there, and I'm saying to people as well about promoting that physical activity helps your mental state, whether you're doing a 2K run, which for some people is probably just as hard for them physically and mentally as that bike ride was for me. People have different fitness levels and mental levels as well. So I would never criticize someone who's doing a 2K run.
When you were over in the Middle East and they were banging on your window and you thought you're being compromised and they were just trying to help, what did you learn about the different countries that you rode your bike through? Did it change the way you feel about humanity?
Yeah, it does. I've been very fortunate to be around the world and see different cultures as well. And I think that's where I've been successful in the security industry, is understanding those cultures. And strangely enough, the more hospitable countries are those that don't actually have much money. Some of the most hospitable people I meet don't have 2 pennies to rub, but they will give you everything they have. And they always still have a smile on their face. And whether that's in Africa or in South America, a lot of people say to me, oh, you cycle through Mexico, you cycle through Colombia. Yeah, but I'm a security consultant. For me, I thoroughly enjoyed that. The only security issue we had on the whole ride was Colorado. Someone broke into the support vehicle.
When I finished your book, Relentless, and it is a fantastic read, I'll make sure I include it on the notes, but was there any time in your life that stands out where you truly feared your outcome?
For me, there's always the questions of what if I didn't join the military? What if my dad didn't get custody of me and my sisters? What would the outcome be there? Would I still be the same person I am now? And again, I don't look back. I always look forward. You do make decisions in life. Some of them are right and some of them are wrong, as long as you sort of learn from them as well. We have a great thing in the military called the hot debrief. What worked, what didn't work, and if we can do it again, what would we do differently? And I talked about earlier about failure. People hate the word failure. I call it an experience. I think as long as you learn from that experience and don't repeat it, then you're advancing. When you see people repeating the same failures, then they're not learning from that.
Dean, I always end my conversations with my takeaways, and there's so many, but I always try to bring it down to 3. The first one is, I really do wish we could bottle so much of how you approach life. Today, kids are living with such negativity, chasing false stereotypes and screens, and with it, a growing sense of impossibility, especially young men. And I think that they need to have the gift that you had with just trying to figure stuff out as a kid. But when you got in the military, as you said, finding your tribe and realizing it's humanity working together where the magic lies. The second one is you can't control the uncontrollable, a powerful statement. And even within it, when you said, there's nothing wrong with failure if we learn from it. You're talking from experience, not some guy that wrote or woman that wrote some 5 steps to this or 5 steps to that. And then the third one is just this, what you started off was you talked about, you can argue till you're blue in your face, you rarely change someone's opinion. But if you believe in something, back it up with action. and that can change the world. So for all of this and more, I'd love to be sitting and having a dinner conversation between these two superpowers, which are so different, yet so happily in love and married. And any time that you drive her crazy, she sends you out on another world record adventure.
Yeah, no, thank you. I used to dread going away because if I went away for too long, Alana has a lot of ideas. I'd come back and so I try not to go away as often now.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.